Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today on net zero targets and how the timber construction sector and the insurance market can work together to help us all meet those targets. We're going to start off today with just a short video, which I'll run for you now, and then when we come back, I'll introduce our panelists for the day, and then we'll start off our conversation. So yeah, the video should be starting now.
The science on climate is overwhelming. I used to meet a lot of climate deniers 8-10 years ago. Now I meet relatively few, and I think we have won the argument based on science. If we don't address CO2, we're going to change the climate with serious social, economic and health problems. You know, we're using far more of the world's resources than we should be, and that will have to be addressed. We're going to have less impact. So in construction, we have to use more recycled materials, we have to use more sustainable materials, we have to use more timber.
We will build. Build back better, build back greener, build back faster.
What we're trying to achieve from an economic point of view is a circular economy. So you use something at one end and it then becomes a waste product and just goes back into the environment, rather than drawing something out of the environment, using a huge amount of energy into turning it into something useful and then creating a waste product. So wood is definitely part of a circular economy approach to construction, because you know the trees grow naturally, they absorb carbon while they're growing, and then they hold that carbon and store it while they're in the building, and then when the building's finished, that carbon can go back into the soil. So really that's how things were for most of our history, and the creation of buildings through brick and through steel and glass is a much more energy intensive way of building. So I think there's a really important role for timber in construction in a sustainable society.
People really want to make a contribution to, you know, resisting the destruction of our planet. And I think one of the ways that they can do that is you know, be enthusiastic about the use of timber in buildings. So we just have to be very clear about its performance values. Obviously fire being a key one, but we can do that. And timber has a huge part to play in sustainability. So I think the use of timber in buildings can only increase. Especially as we are now thinking very seriously about our own resilience as the UK and the potential for using more of our homegrown product.
Well, our definition, or my definition of mass timber, is an engineered timber product, so a glulam or a cross-laminated timber, CLT, or an LVL, laminated veneer lumber. So these are highly engineered, using glue and engineered timber for structural purposes. It's been around a long time. It's not, everyone keeps talking about it as a new technology. I mean, it's new in comparison to steel and concrete, but it's not that new. And there's lots of examples around the world that we can learn from, in Australia, in America, in Scandinavia, in Central Europe. And we just need to learn from them and pick up, you know, their learnings and take that forward. So I think the opportunities are widespread.
Well, as you know, government have done the Future Homes Standard, so they've already set some milestones, and we as a business have sort of supported that, I suppose, by saying, well, look, we're going to go with that, and by 2030 we'll be looking to be zero carbon with our new homes. To do that as a major business, we know the challenge that come with actually delivering that successfully, and the key for us is we're pulling together a roadmap. We're quite lucky because, as you're aware, we've already built a zero carbon site, Hannam Hall, and we've built a zero carbon home, the greenhouse at the BRE. So we've got some, you know, good experiences of how you meet the challenges of delivering zero carbon. But we're still talking about delivering anywhere between sort of 12 to 18,000 homes in the future to be net zero carbon. I suppose probably the most important thing is we've purchased a timber frame company. So I think our strategy is pretty clear.
The government last year made what I think was a really significant announcement, which was 5 key government departments have now been instructed that when they're actually commissioning construction works, they have to have what's called a presumption in favour of MMC. Now, it doesn't mean they actually have to use modern methods of construction. It means that they have to first look at modern methods of construction, and they then have to put forward a definitive argument as to why they can't use it. So it's a sort of opt-out rather than an opt-in. And to be fair, the Department for Education are very keen on this. They see significant standardisation in MMC. They obviously build something like 200 new schools a year get built. And so we are seeing this sort of trickle down from central government to the departments, and then from the departments to the suppliers. And so I think that over the next 2 or 3 years we will see a really significant growth in MMC. At the end of the day, if you're using steel framed MMC, or indeed precast concrete planks, which are still MMC, then we're sort of forgetting about the embodied carbon. So from an RLB perspective, if we're looking at the holistic project, if we're looking not just at how you build it but how you use it, indeed how you might even take it down eventually, then clearly timber has a massive role to play in this.
I mean, the reality of it is we need a number of options, and I think we need more homes, therefore we will rely on all the technologies. But you know, there's no doubt under MMC, timber frame has got a long history in this industry, which gives people confidence.
I think the future is bright. I don't think we're going to be building all of our buildings out of mass timber. I think we have to be realistic about that. But I think we're going to, you'll be cycling to work one day or cycling through parts of London and the UK, and you're going to see lots of mass timber buildings going up. And I think also getting younger people involved is quite important as well, because we find that they are just as interested in this as the current generation. And the more we teach them, they can take that enthusiasm on, and hopefully we'll be in a lot better position in 10 years' time in terms of our learnings and best practice.
I've seen buildings across Europe which use timber and are meeting the sort of performance levels that we're looking for our net zero journey. So I'm absolutely confident that timber's part of that journey. We just need to be doing more of it in this country, and sooner.
We have to use more timber. We have to find ways of proving it's safe to address concerns on the part of the insurers. But you know, construction is a big industry in the UK. It should be possible.
Well, I can understand why people might be concerned about wood being a combustible material, because we're just not used to living in wooden buildings in this country. But obviously plenty of other societies mainly have wooden buildings. You can think about Scandinavian countries and also the US, and there isn't an insurance problem there. And actually the biggest threat to insurance values is coming from climate change and the really serious and extreme weather events that we're having now, which are much more likely to create problems for the insurance industry than, you know, the very unusual event of a wooden building catching fire.
But increasingly the argument that there are financial risks in being unsustainable, which is what people like me and many other colleagues in the sector have spent years making that case to the insurance companies and to the pension funds, we've won that argument. They now recognise it. The regulators recognise it. So we've got large investors asking their fund managers for increased sustainability, and we've got the regulators changing the rules to force it, to force consideration of these issues. The insurers recognise the investment risks in their portfolios, in things like coal, in things like oil, and they're seeking to mitigate those. The interesting bit is what they do in their main business streams. Do they offer lower premiums to industries and to companies which are behaving more sustainably because there's less chance of those companies being sued? And we're beginning, I think, to see that kind of thinking in how they underwrite, in the insurance products they offer. But it's very early days, and there's more the insurers could do there. But I think that will be the trend we see going forward, is the sustainability thinking coming through to how they actually do the business of insurance as opposed to the business of investment. And that is where I think the construction industry, you know, there are opportunities for it. If it shifts to a more sustainable model, I think over time the insurers will recognise that, and hopefully financial benefits will flow.
So when I first got involved in construction at Gallagher, we so happened to be involved in insuring what I think is still the largest CLT residential structure in Europe. and it opened my and our collective eyes, I think, to this market. We as a team, as a division, have realised that we need to be doing the right thing. This is only a growth market. It is the right thing to do, but also a huge opportunity if done correctly. And the world, there really only seems to be one way to take on the huge challenges set by the government around carbon neutrality by 2050 in the built environment. And the only obvious solution right now is timber in terms of carbon credentials. So unless I've totally missed something, it seems to be the only answer right now, and therefore something that we have to understand, we have to embrace, we have to make work, otherwise we'll get nowhere near those targets. There's no other material out there.
Welcome back, everyone, and I hope you found that video useful. So we'll move on to the panel discussion part of our call now. So if I can just introduce our panelists, we have Andrew Carpenter from the Structural Timber Association.
Good morning.
Morning, Andrew. Andrew's been the Chief Executive of the STA for 10 years now.
That's right.
And he's been working with the association. They have 800 members now, and they're working kind of on behalf of the sector from design through manufacturing to erection and installation, and helping out all their members and associates with things around technical help, health and safety, sustainability, and quality. We also have Marcus Saunders, who's joining us from Gallagher's. He's a broker specialising in the construction industry. And he's been working with the STA, I think, since 2011 now, and working with a lot of their members who've been actually struggling to get insurance, kind of helping them to understand and drill down how the STA operates and think, and how they can help these projects get off the ground. So, Andrew, if I can come to you first, it'd be really helpful if you could maybe tell us all a bit about what these 2050 net zero targets are, and why, kind of, if we carry on the way we are at the moment, we might be in danger of missing them.
Yeah, it's a very good place to start, I think, first of all, to understand where we stand, what we're doing and why we're doing it. So June of last year, the government passed legislation requiring the UK to have net emissions of greenhouse gases by 100% relative to 1990 by the year 2050. So the net zero emissions have to be net zero. Now there's an understanding that isn't going to be possible. So there's a degree of offsetting that is permissible. But by and large, by 2050, this government and therefore this country has committed that we will be net zero in terms of carbon emissions. So that's the place where we all start. And I think as a construction industry, we have a huge part to play in this agenda, because we're responsible, depending on which book and which website you read, but anything between 36% and 40% of all these emissions actually come from the UK construction industry. So you can see why there's such a focus on the work that we carry out.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Andrew. And you mentioned there around kind of the carbon offsetting, and when we were speaking prior to this call, you mentioned kind of some of the issues about how that kind of elapses over time, and using timber and construction can help with that. Are you able to just explain a bit about that for our audience?
Yeah, of course. So what we're finding now is that more and more clients, well, we heard on the video Oliver Novakovic from Barratt's explaining that they have a target of net zero new homes by 2030, which is very adventurous compared to what the government is proposing. In fact, as I go around the UK, various local authorities seem to be competing with one another. I think the latest I've heard is 2028. But the point is that everybody is wanting to move towards this net zero figure. So clients are recognizing it, designers, specifiers, right through the supply chain. And timber is the building material of choice simply because of its, its wonderful position, if you like, in terms of what it achieves. So roughly 1 ton of carbon is stored for every meter cubed of timber. So that's why there's a move towards to use as much timber as one possibly can. If you take Hackney Council in London, for example, they've got a timber first policy. If you go across the water to France, Macron has said that by 2022, any government procured buildings, 50% have to be of timber construction. So you can see the direction of travel in which people are heading.
Definitely. And if I can come to you now, Marcus, for a bit. Obviously, kind of this is about kind of an insurance webinar. What role is the insurance industry playing here, and how at the moment is insurance being a bit of a block for these construction projects?
Well, I think the insurance market, I got involved in working with the STA back in 2011. They were struggling with some of their members getting insurance on site. And basically, I did a little tour of quite a few members to try to understand what the problem was, and then I did a little tour of around the country to explain where the insurers need to understand the CDM requirements under where main contractors have got responsibility, and hopefully address and MMC or allow for those methods to construct and basically proceed looking insurance market at the moment. They're still trying to find. They always try to they're trying to find what's a history, or the actuaries are banging out the claims experience, and I think you'll find there's a lot of firms in the construction world, but we in the timber sector seem to be getting a blame for a lot of them, which are a little bit unjust. And I think with the way we're moving forward, innovation on construction, carrying forward, and Boris telling us to build back better, getting and turning around a lot more, also be the way forward, and timber frame is a key part of that. And I think looking at the price and have a look to say, look what's going on here. Let's start understanding, drill down like I had to when I started looking at it from a broker point of view. I mean, the STA management there's the 16 steps as site safety, and now we've got accreditation where there's an audit called the Sta Assure, which I'm starting to put my presentations out to the market to see and show insurers that look how good these guys are, separate them from non-members, and show that the timber sector is really taking the ball by. Let's create a way forward. Let's show that we are operating in best practice.
Okay, thanks.
So sure, we need to have a look at that.
Thanks, Marcus. I think we may have had a bit of trouble with the audio there, possibly. Andrew, Marcus was talking there about kind of the 16 steps that you have about the STA and kind of the audit process you have there. Could you maybe explain a bit about there and kind of how you're working with the industry, the insurance industry?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been focusing on raising the bar in everything we do as a trade association, and therefore as a sector. Certainly for the 10 years I've been in post, and before that, we introduced the 16 steps to fire safety about 11 years ago, and it's now become entwined in UK construction as best practice. which we're delighted about, because obviously what we want to do is remove any barriers there are to the use of structural timber. More recently, we've widened that, and we have something called the Sta Assure Scheme. All members of the STA are required to pass this Assure process, and here the idea is to give confidence to all stakeholders in both the systems that we produce and the processes. And this is a rigorous audit carried out by a third party, and it is a requirement of membership. So we have it for designers, we have it for manufacturers, and we have it for, importantly, erectors. More and more emphasis nowadays is being put on the erection or installation teams. And this is an area we're concentrating on, certainly post Grenfell, post Hackett, and now the Building Safety Bill, which was issued, what, a month ago. So we're putting a huge emphasis on the erection team. And as I say, this is to give confidence to anyone that wants to use structural timber, that they can do so safely and with confidence.
Absolutely. And you mentioned kind of working there with safety and confidence. Obviously, there's quite a few kind of misconceptions around the safety of these timber constructed buildings. Maybe you could kind of just talk to us a bit there, Andrew, about why actually that may not be the case.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are a number of myths around not just timber frame, but all forms of what we call MMC now, modern methods of construction. I think, as we heard from Anne Bentley on the film, there is now in many areas, particularly in government circles, a presumption in favour of MMC. So it is now accepted as a way forward within the whole of the construction sector that MMC is coming. So we need to educate ourselves. The interesting thing is that if we look at housing, about 1 in 4 homes in England and Wales are built in timber frame. If we go north of the border to Scotland, it's about 3 in 4 homes built in timber frame. In fact, worldwide, about 3 in 4 homes are built in timber frame. So whilst it is what you loosely call MMC, a modern method of construction, actually it's not that modern. It's an off-site procedure that's been around a long time. And you ask the question, you know, why it's not used, shall we say, or what the obstacles are. I think it's a question of culture, and I think it's a question of behaviour, because we've always done it that way, and that's how we seem to carry on. So south of the border, you know, we've got people used to building in masonry, and so that's what they're familiar with. If you go north of the border, it's the other way around. They're familiar with timber frame. So, I mean, my hope is that we can take some of the best practice from Scotland and we can introduce that south of the border, both in terms of specifiers, designers, but also working closely with the insurance industry and with the mortgage industry to, it's all about education, really. It's all about understanding, and we want to be at the forefront of that.
Absolutely, fantastic. And Marcus, Andrew was speaking there about kind of sharing back best practice and learning from other parts of the world, such as Scotland or wherever. And the insurance industry obviously has a large part to play there. What do you think insurers can do better to help with that, I suppose, that data sharing and best practice sharing process?
I think insurers need to really get to grips with the understanding of the way these timber frames are built, what's gone into them, the engineering and the materials used, to show that there is nothing to fear. The structural quality is good as any other type of material. It's sustainable, it's greener, and it is what the government wants to build. Insurers need to really get to ask more questions about what type of erecting company are being used, what type of designing company used, whether it's all coming from the same sort of thread like the STA membership, which are of higher quality, you know. And as I say, fussy, I'm a contractor snob. I like ones that pay and ones that operate in best practice. And I've got 70 odd plus members of the STA now, and this is basically part of my job. It's educating insurers, it's educating clients, making sure the clients are keeping to best practice. I go around and talk to a lot of and saying, make sure you've got your health and safety in place, your risk management, you're doing all the right things, because that enables insurers to get allowed discounts because they understand what's going on. But I think insurers need to start asking questions, start saying, okay, we want to do this, but this is how we'd like. We're trying to do quite a few round tables at the moment, albeit virtual, where we are inviting insurers to come and talk to us and say, look, this is what we've got. We've got a couple of insurers that are starting to think, actually, this is the way forward. It confuses me. You've got people in general that are starting to get into the construction and build these things themselves. We've got Aviva Investments that want to and building and managing big property portfolios involving timber. There's the big guys like Amazon and Google that are going to start coming in. We need to really start thinking, hold on, we're going to get in on this. We've got the Scandinavian countries, we've got the Aussie. They're all better at understanding our risk.
I think you're cutting out a bit there, Marcus.
Oh, sorry.
Matt, may I make just a quick comment, if I may, around about fire safety? Because fire safety is absolutely close to our hearts, I promise you that. And first comment is that actually fires affect all forms of construction, not just timber. We seem to get the press, but actually Grenfell, for example, wasn't a timber frame site. But we hold it very importantly in terms of our priorities. And what we're wanting to make sure with the Sta Assure scheme, the key to fire safety is, first of all, in the design, that it's designed properly so that there's risk mitigation. And secondly, that, as I say, it's erected or installed properly, which is where we have something called the Timber Frame Competency Scheme, which is an audit scheme which our erecting community have to go through. So it's absolutely paramount that we acknowledge fire safety as a key element of our industry, as the whole of the building industry, but we are embracing it. And as long as it's designed and erected correctly, then there is no issue with it any more than any other form of building material.
And am I right in thinking, Andrew, that there's been some recent changes in building regulations that have maybe led some insurers to have some misconceptions about timber as well?
We're waiting at the moment. There is MHCLG had a consultation which finished towards the end of May, which they haven't reported on yet, where they're looking to reduce the ability to use combustible materials from 18 metres down to 11. That's probably to what you refer, but at the moment there is no news on that. We're eagerly awaiting the decision, because obviously there's two camps. There's one camp that is saying, for goodness sake, don't ban structural timber systems, because if you do, you knock a big hole in the zero carbon agenda. And then of course there's another lobby, the masonry lobby, who are saying, please do ban it. So it's an interesting position in which we find ourselves, but no result yet.
And I was actually thinking around the difference between kind of preservation of life and preservation of the building.
I beg your pardon.
So yeah, no problem. But yeah, if you could speak a bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah, there is a move. I think that's probably being led by the insurance industry, if I'm honest. That up until recently, building regs a bit about saving life, but now we're looking at a more holistic view, shall we say, whereby the preservation of the building is also being taken into account. And yes, that's also that's being discussed at the moment, as are so many other things. I don't know whether Marcus has got anything he wants to add to that, because obviously you're at the heart of it, Marcus, aren't you?
Yeah, I think the insurers are very twitchy, it seems to me, about post Grenfell, posting Judith Hackett's report, and I think we need to We need to ensure that confidence is coming back into the construction sector and the insurers to make sure that everybody's happy with where we're going forward. I think, like Boris has said, let's build it the quality in the timber sector, and the way the mass timber is coming in the future. We are getting around that, and there is a learning curve with everybody, because this is something the timber engineer product is so built and so airtight and watertight so quickly, and it is all about compartmentation these days. So you know, if something goes on in one element, you know, there's so many and safety procedures in now, just storing that loss in that area. So a lot of things like that that are coming out, and we need to tell insurers that as a sector, and as I seem to be there format for that, and that is, I need to really come on board. Look at this innovation. We're ticking all the boxes. Boris has given. We need to really drill down, get the surveyors out there and all the associations that come along with insurers, and say, look.
I think we're losing you a bit there again.
Sorry, okay.
Marcus, you need to get your Wi-Fi provider out. Yeah, I think, Matt, what was interesting for me was a comment from one of the talking heads that we've just seen. I think it was Molly Scott Cato, that actually suggested that the bigger problem coming up on the horizon for insurers was actually aligned to the climate crisis. You know, so it's something I think that insurers are going to have to address, the issues that are coming forward because of the climate crisis agenda.
And yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, Andrew. I think Marcus made that point earlier as well, and apologies if
sorry if I missed it. Sorry, Matt. It was the
no, it's fine. I was going to come to your views on it as well, actually, because obviously sustainability is kind of rising up the agenda quite a lot at the moment. We have some insurers who, for example, won't insure kind of companies associated with the coal industry and things like that. So do you think that actually insurers here, kind of Marcus mentioned about kind of Aviva Investments and the like getting involved in this sector, do you think insurers therefore have a vital role to play in promoting these kind of projects by getting involved in helping to insure them and cover the risks?
Absolutely essential. The insurance industry is a key part of the construction supply chain and influences the way in which we operate in many ways. What really encourages me is that I'm seeing the insurance industry wanting to learn, wanting to be educated in the use of structural timber systems. I think there's an acknowledgement that the use of structural timber is going to be on the increase. And if they don't insure it, then obviously they're going to cut off a lot of the market which they could operate in. So what pleases me is we're getting a lot of requests for information and education. And there's just a few figures I'd like to throw into or a couple of figures, Matt, I'd like to throw into the pot, because I was doing a little bit of research before coming on this morning, and I read a really good report from WSP. But the quote that really hit me, it said that the embodied energy in the bricks of a typical Victorian terraced house could drive a car more than 10 times around the world. If you just stop and think about that, you can see why more and more people with conscience are wanting to use timber instead of masonry. I mean, another figure I'll just give you. At the moment, as you know, the UK government is aiming to build 300,000 homes a year. We're not getting anywhere near that at the moment, but we're having a good try. But if you built those 300,000 homes in timber rather than masonry, then you would store 6 million tons of carbon. 6 million tons if you were to construct those houses. Now that's the sort of agenda that we're striving for to get to 2050. So that's why it's so important, and that's why we want to work with the insurance industry to remove any obstacles there may be, to allow people like Barrett's, who've made a clear decision to go down the route of timber frame by the purchase of Oregon. We've got Countryside, who've done the same thing by purchasing West Frame. We've already got Persimmon, who have got a company called Space 4 as part of their family. So the move is happening already. It's there, and it's accelerating for the reasons that we've already talked about.
Definitely, thank you. And we've actually had a kind of question / comment come through on the Q&A, and if there are any more questions from any of our attendees, then please feel free to drop them. There's a little button that says Q&A at the bottom of your screen, so you can submit them in there, and we'll come back to those. But the message here says, whilst we know that embodied carbon is part of whole life carbon, to many folks' idea of net zero, it is not. Sequestered carbon cannot currently be rewarded under current LCA rules, and we need to change this. Could you maybe talk a bit about that as well, please, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I agree with the comment, and I agree with the question, and that's exactly the type of agenda that we're addressing. So I'll make a note now that I need to address the LCA. I certainly think up until very recently, the only carbon that people have been considering is operating carbon during operation. So the whole idea of embodied carbon is relatively new, and we're not famous for acting quickly within the UK construction industry. So I take on board the point. I agree totally with Simon. I think it is Simon Corby who's asked the question. And on the specific point of the LCA, I will make sure, sir, I take that up as part of our agenda going forward.
Thanks very much for that, Andrew. And Marcus, if I can come to you now. We heard a bit about sorry, we had a bit earlier about how kind of there may be some change around preservation of life versus the preservation of the building. And the ABI have said that is, I think, the Fire Protection Authority, they rely quite heavily on that for how they go about kind of assessing the risk of timber. Could you maybe speak a bit about how the ABI is engaging with those kind of regulations, possible change there, and what that might mean going forward for the industry?
Yeah, we were on a round table with the ABI last hour ago, and we were raising a profile about the timber frame, and we were mentioning obviously Grenfell aftermath, and at the moment they're saying that the building regs aren't fit for purpose throughout the UK, and that this is what Boris is obviously better. We need to really get the insurers behind the construction, as you said, and start, saying, look, what can we do to assist in understanding the quality and getting the quality out there. So not only do we preserve the life of the building, but the bodies. And I think that's something the whole construction sector and the insurance industry should, as a looking and saying, look, we've got an issue here in the UK. Let's do something about it. If we can get, insurers say they want early involvement. We hear the designers and the construction industry also want early involvement. So let's get and let's do that. The sooner everybody sings from the same book, then we're going to get it right moving forward. And I think, yes, the ABI needs to. I know they're busy in other things out at the moment, but I think we need to get the ABI involved, get people around the table like the FPA, Structural Timber Association. Let's really thrash it out, collaborative to go forward. So this box is ticked.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Matt, may I just jump in, if I may, because again we're struggling a little bit, aren't we, with the Wi-Fi. Only last week we had a meeting with the FPA because obviously we're very, very aware of the influence that they bring to bear on the insurance industry. And there is a desire between both parties to work collaboratively to overcome any issues that there may be. I'm aware, for example, that the FPA have just issued a questionnaire for CLT, for mass timber. We will be looking at that to see if we can come up with some of the solutions. And we've agreed going forward that we will work with the FPA on questionnaires surrounding timber frame and SIPs, because they believe that many of the answers to what they're asking will actually be found in the Sta Assure document. So I think that's a really good move. And we've had a similar meeting with the ABI. So we're trying to establish close links with the insurance industry, which is great. And I've actually had an invitation online, Matt, from Simon to join the LCA this afternoon at 1 o'clock. So if somebody can send me the link, I'd be delighted to forego my lunch and join that webinar as well.
Fantastic, that's good to hear. Yeah. We've actually had a few more questions come in now, Andrew, as well. One of them here is saying that modern methods of construction and timber are vital on the way forward, but until underwriters are happy with the fire retardant measures put in place to make the timber as fire safe as possible, they will only continue to see it for what it is, which is potentially a huge fire accelerant. Could you maybe talk a bit about that and talk about how kind of you know the work you do with Sta Assure and around the design of the buildings can help combat some of those risks?
Yeah, I mean, this really does come back to what we've already mentioned, the 16 steps to fire safety, which is fire during construction, and then the Sta Assure scheme, which takes you right through the design, manufacture and erection process. And what we insist upon is that that element of the supply chain for which our members are responsible, they go through this best practice procedure on which they are audited, and they have to pass to retain their membership. So that is critical. That there are, I think, a lot of the comments that are made because maybe folks, underwriters, haven't been engaged in projects, and they hear anecdotal evidence without actually looking at the facts and the evidence that we ask and insist upon. So what we're looking upon is absolutely the correct design with risk mitigation taken into account and then executed correctly on site. And if that happens, there should be no problems. But of course, we are aware, unfortunately, that you know, from time to time, things are not carried out in line with the design. So that's why we have the audit process.
Absolutely. And am I right in thinking, Andrew, that last year I think there were 2 timber buildings that were a total loss, but neither of them were properly constructed. Is that right?
There were a couple of high-profile fires, and yes, there were many more fires on many more construction sites. But because they happened to be built in timber, then it got high profile. So yeah, I mean, first of all, there was no loss of life, but we are, to be honest with you, there's still investigations underway or ongoing. So I think it would be inappropriate for me to say they weren't built properly. I think that at this moment in time, that there isn't, to my knowledge, it hasn't come across my desk anyway, the official conclusion of either. In other words, it's the investigation is still underway. So I think, to be honest, Matt, it would be inappropriate of me to give you a specific answer on that.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand. Got a few more questions coming in here as well, and also just to say apologies for some of the issues we've been having with Marcus's connection, but he has kindly offered, if anyone does have any specific questions they'd like to ask of him, if you're unable to hear his comments back, then please feel free to to get in touch with us, and we can put you in contact with Marcus after this webinar, and you can kind of have some conversations there offline. So apologies again for that. Another question we've had here, it goes back to a point earlier where we talked about sharing of best practice and kind of data across different sectors. We have that obviously other countries, the sector and the insurance industry work together in this data sharing and best practice. What is different in the UK, and what is making that harder for that to take place over here? Marcus, maybe if I can come to you and see how your connection is now.
Yeah, it may be better if I turn the video off, will it? Anyway, I think I've started to also what we're doing wrong here. In fact, some of my colleagues and myself are talking to other countries at the moment through our Gallagher network to see what is different. And I know there's a lot of strict warranties in place in America. We're trying to get hold of some other countries to see what is. I think it still boils down to information or understanding that's out there within the UK, in Wales, but I think we need to learn a lot more about the sector. I mean, because this is not going to come, and I think maybe we have a joint STA and building regs and FPA and insurers meeting sometime, and just to get information out there, start swapping details and making sure that the information is available, because it is very frustrating not being able to do what the French do, the Scandinavians do, etc. We're in Gallagher's, we're trying to get to the bottom of that. And as soon as we can, find out what their approach is, why their approach is different. I think good old us in this country, we're still bowler hats and pinstripe suits, and a little bit back in Lloyd's Cafe still sometimes. But it's life. We got to move on now. We got to stop looking backwards. We got to start looking forwards. We got to think, what are they putting in place to mitigating these losses? What are we doing? And that's the bit. My job and brokers out there should be telling underwriters, look how good XYZ are doing, look what they're putting in place. And there's onus on brokers as well as underwriters. We need to share more information. We need to get earlier involvement in. Let's start collaboratively working. I work with a lot of insurers now in tripartites with my clients, because they want to understand what's going on now. They want to move forward with that client, and we see best practice in place. But it is a very frustrating thing when you've got all the other countries doing so well, and we're a little bit behind. And one day we'll catch them up and overtake them. I hope that wasn't a robotic reply that time.
No, that was really helpful. So so thanks for that.
Okay, I'll just stay invisible.
Yeah, it does seem to be working better now with the audio. So hopefully that will help going forward. We've got another question coming, probably best answered by you, Marcus. That some homeowners are being met with extortionate insurance premiums because of the materials used in the construction of their building. What can insurers and brokers do to support those policyholders, and what work's, I suppose, being done to make that insurance and that cover more affordable going forward?
Again, I'm one of those homeowners. I live in a timber-framed building, and I've spoken to the insurers directly myself to do my own home insurance, and I've explained to them that all the systems of practices in place, everything has been signed off by building control. So their real issue is just, unfortunately, with a lot of online insurers at the moment, we're doing the computer says no, we're doing the tick box exercise. Nobody seems to be underwriting like we always used to back in the day. The old now, and I think the generation we're in, we're more social media, we're more computer orientated, and I don't think there's a lot of thinking outside the box, which we should be doing now, especially when we have issues like what's happening with the Carillion outburst and then the COVID problems. We've got to start thinking a little bit more underwriting, a bit more in the box. Let's ignore it. I think we need to get back to the old days in that aspect and start underwriting again, start looking at the rates, see what's being put in place. It is I mean, it's not just timber frame or construction and buildings. We've got floods issues around the country. We need to start thinking what areas in the country are putting in mitigating circumstances. You know, we got flood barriers and stuff like that. Why aren't insurers looking at that in a bit more of a positive approach and start saying, actually, they're putting a bit of that in with the local authority. I know it's a big concern and stuff like that, but I think we need to just step back a little bit, have a look at it and see what we can do with the insurers and the government and say, let's stop this misconceived ideas and houses are still standing, whether Tudor houses back in the day when they were all built of timber. So I use that as one of my case studies when I'm arguing with an insurer. I've got a Wilmot Dixon building that's a fire station built out of timber with timber cladding. How else can that be wrong? You know, so it's frustrating.
No, definitely, yeah. And you mentioned earlier about kind of maybe some of the traditions of the insurance industry and maybe sometimes being a bit kind of slow to move with innovations, being a bit of an issue. On the flip side of things, so kind of, do you think there's also the point of maybe some of the younger generation coming through maybe have a bit more of, kind of sustainability and kind of green credentials higher up their kind of list of priorities? Do you think that could actually be a good thing as well, with helping to shift the industry forward in that regard?
Most definitely. I mean, my own children are so computer literate and social media mad. I mean, they're even, I mean, we got Minecraft now, building blocks and stuff like that, which is, kids are starting earlier. The whole, I mean, we've just seen on the news today, Prince William and Sir David Attenborough working together on getting the world a bit more clean and safe. Yes, we are learning more because we got the social media out there and the platforms are coming. We never knew about this sort of thing back in the day. So we're learning more as the world goes on and progresses. We are starting to think like this. We're handling the plastic problem. We're starting to adapt to that. So back to the construction industry, the same. It is frustrating. I think we all got to learn from this. This is a great time now. We're going forward. We've had our little disaster with the year this year. Let's move forward now and let's start putting things right. Let's build properly. Let's talk properly, and let's communicate in a way that we can only get the country going better. Up the UK, I say.
Matt, my sincere apologies. My Wi-Fi just dropped out. We haven't had a lot of luck with Wi-Fi this morning, have we?
No, well, we're glad to welcome you back, and we managed to get Marcus's audio working a bit better while you were gone. So that was good timing, if anything.
Perfect.
He was just talking there, Andrew, about kind of the new generation coming through into the industry, kind of with possibly, you know, kind of green credentials, sustainability, climate change higher up their agenda. Is that something you're seeing as well? And do you think that will help give you a bit more clout?
I think we're experiencing a whole generation of young people who have got the green agenda, if you want to call it that, as part of their DNA. Certainly, you know, my younger children who are mid-20s now are in that boat. So if you take house builders, for example, up until recently, the only questions asked would be location, location, location. But all of a sudden now, young people are having a little bit more interest in, for example, energy efficiency. And of course, you know, timber buildings have very good energy efficiency credentials. About the materials. So asking questions that maybe my generation wouldn't have thought about asking. You've only had to see recently, haven't you, on the TV, David Attenborough with the Royal Children. I mean, I think that's an example of the direction of travel. So yes, I think there's a generation of people certainly coming up through the construction industry, and I would suggest that was probably the same in insurance, and in fact in any sector, who have got more of a conscience maybe in terms of the green agenda than we have or had. The one word that keeps getting quoted to me is purpose. That the young generation are very keen on purpose, and I think part of that agenda is embedded in the net zero carbon agenda. So I would say absolutely, Matt, I would support everything that Marcus has said, which I didn't hear while my Wi-Fi was down.
And just on that point there, the insurance industry kind of at times does struggle a bit reputationally. Do you think that by supporting these projects and making clear that they're supporting this kind of green agenda, as you called it, that that kind of they could actually give their reputation a bit of a boost and improve their standing?
I would say from a brand point of view, it was exactly the agenda they should be embarking upon. I would say if they want to promote their brand to an audience, prospective customers, then adopting the net zero agenda and incorporating that in their sales pitch, if you like, would be incredibly important from a business angle, certainly.
Okay, fantastic, brilliant. And we're coming to the end of our time now, sadly, but just from you, Andrew, and then Mark comes to you afterwards, what are your hopes? What are your hopes for the future in terms of how you will engage with the insurance industry and then how you can help meet these net zero targets by 2050?
Okay, shall I start?
Go for it, Andrew. Yeah. Fantastic.
Okay, so the first thing I would ask is if Simon could give me the link in the chat box for the 1 o'clock webinar. I will join you in an hour's time. My hopes, obviously from an STA point of view, selfishly first, is that we can grow market share in the use of structural timber systems here in England and Wales as per the rest of the world. But by being selfish and wishing that for ourselves, we're actually also acting as a very positive move for the climate crisis agenda, which is worldwide and which is affecting us all. So by using more structural timber in the UK building sector, we will at the same time help to reach the net zero targets, certainly by 2050 that the government have laid down. And as I say, other councils and other clients, such as Barratt's, have laid more ambitious targets. So both from our own point of view, but also from the wider appeal, it's absolutely essential that more structural timber is used in construction.
Brilliant, thanks, Andrew. And same question to you there, Marcus, as well, please.
Well, what I wish from my wish list is insurers to open up their eyes, and there must be some more old age pensioners and hippies like me that recycle and green and join on the Sir David Attenborough bandwagon. I've done this for 10 years with the timber sector now and construction even longer, and I just think I would like insurers to start really understanding what's going on and start listening. And if they want, contact me. I will help them with everything I know to move that along. We'll do round tables, whatever. I just want insurers to look at this sector and start saying, actually, it's not as bad as we thought. They are trying to stop losses from happening, and we need to educate the follow-on trades as well, which we can do. And that's instructing us and stuff like that. I think it's like just to see things improve, not be the bad boys of the market, which you all make us out and the press do. And I think it's a good time now for timber, and it is great for the environment and sustainable forward. And if we don't do it, then our kids and grandkids aren't going to see the wonderful things that we see. So yeah, my vision is let's keep working, let's keep talking, and move this forward.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that there, Marcus. Sadly, that is the end of our time now, but I hope that you found it all useful, and that this goes to some way to helping the education agenda that we were speaking about there. So thanks very much to all of our attendees for listening in, and thank you as well to our panelists, Andrew Carpenter and Marcus Saunders.
And thank you, Matt, for so expertly chairing a very difficult hour with our Wi-Fi issue. So thank you.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.